This conference will now be recorded.
In theory, you know, it should be stopped.
Here's my colleague.
Hello.
We're
All right.
Minnesota Energy Resources.
All right.
Are there any amendments to the agenda?
No.
Is there a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
Discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 0, 0. Approval of the September 12th minutes.
We approve the minutes as printed.
I'll second it.
Discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain. Carried, 7, 0. We have, let's see. Yeah. Public hearing for the CUP, and that's who these gentlemen are here for. So I will, well, I did before I open the public hearing, any comments from Kurt?
No, nothing's changed. We have Paul and Ben in the back, and Jason is on the line here. They were prepared to have a presentation, but I told them that they just need to answer questions if anybody's got a question about it. You can see the public hearing is not really heavily attended at the moment. But as you very well know, the gas main in front of, well, not gas main, the gas regulation system in front of Nielsen's is going to be moved to the back. It's been staked out there for a couple months. And it just goes, and you can see the example of what it will look like here in the packet on page 3. And then we went through this our last meeting and now went to public hearing. So if you guys have any questions for Paul or Ben, feel free to let them know. Or if you guys have anything you'd like to add for any reason, feel free.
I forgot the last time, is there a, you know, you've got the general CUP language on one of the pages there, but I forget in the ordinance, is there a special section in one of the chapters of the ordinance that says we need a CUP for doing this? I just forget. I'm
Came
sorry.
from Mike. Mike Olson brought it to me as a CUP. I don't know if it's specifically for this, but it's what fit.
I see.
The verbiage at this time. Yeah.
Right. With that, well, I can open a public hearing officially. And are there any comments from your standpoint?
Unless there's any questions.
Okay. And did City Hall receive any?
We got
commentary?
one call from a citizen who lives in the area who was curious to see if their gas service would be interrupted by doing this.
Okay.
And the person was told no. That's been it. And it's been posted in the paper for almost a month.
All right. And I'll close the public hearing. And I mean, there's a laundry list of items that we can either discuss or incorporate in the issuance of a conditional use permit. I don't know if there's any restrictions that we want to include in this. I would doubt it unless there's some sort of issue with noise or something like that, which I can't imagine. So
One question I guess I think of is having this there going to put any restrictions on anything else on that lot? I don't know. I mean, if he wants to put up another storage shed on that lot or whatever, I mean, is that going to make any restrictions on it if we allow this?
I would say yes.
Guys, does it have to be, you can't put a building right by one of these, correct? Is there a certain distance?
We would have to have a minimum of 10 feet clearance from any open windows or anything like that. Just if there was a leak on the gas regulating station, that it wouldn't enter the building. So, as far as, building right up against it, we prefer that they wouldn't encroach on the easement. We can't have a building over a gas line. But as far as, like an easement setback or anything like that, I wouldn't say, we would build it to the easement.
So, I'm just dumb, but where's it being moved to again?
If you look on page 5,
Just west of the grocery
just
store.
west of Nielsen's there.
Just west of the loading dock there.
Yeah.
I do have a little better, that I can pass along, and maybe you probably have this, but it's a little bigger copy for reference. I can, if you like, I some of this here as well.
Yeah. The diagram up above is a little clearer.
Oh, that's a good question.
That's the loading dock.
That's a good question.
This is, yeah, that's the garage.
Yeah, just a little more. What you have here.
Right.
Who owns the property? Is it owned by Nielsen's?
Yes.
They do, yeah. So the Nielsen's all right with this. The only issue is the proximity to the next house to the west, right? Where is it?
30 feet to the line.
Oh, it would have been over here.
So it'll be
It's over
40
here.
feet from the
Lot line. You can see on the easement. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because then 10 foot on there.
Yeah. I don't know if we need to put any type of restrictions on it or
To
not.
say, because if you look at that CUP list, it seems to meet a lot of the criteria, so. I would move we recommend approval of this project based on public benefits and the myriad of CUP guidelines that it meets.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, carried. So that's a recommendation of city council, and then they'll consider it at the next meeting, right? Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Did you know that appearance, Kurt?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, he talked about it.
I'm sorry. Are we still on? We're on the record. I won't make a comment. That sounds like me at home. My spouse is like on top of it and I'm like, huh? Sorry. Forget about it. All right, next, old business. We are talking about the tabled variance application at 620 Golf View. And I saw there was some more comments from the building inspector and then also from Lyle Wendroth, right, Kurt?
Yeah, so I contacted. Based on your recommendation, you can read on page 10, if you can see which one, page 10, it says note from Randy Bothoon of CMS. He's our permit, what do you call it? Go out and check out permits.
Inspector.
Inspector, thank you. He's our inspector for the city, and so I asked him the same question that you asked, and you can see what his response was. If you have a shed, because our ordinance says you have to have a shed 5 feet from your house. And the question was, should we have that ordinance? So from an insurance point of view, at the bottom, you can see it doesn't matter how far the principal structure is, it's insured as what's called a dwelling extension. So it could be right next to the house or it could be far away, because the question was fire possibility.
State building code for fire too.
Correct. But so that was, and then you can read through what Randy said. So number 2, walls of individual dwelling units and their accessory structures located on the same lot. Number 3, detached tool sheds and storage sheds, playhouses. Similar structures exempt from permits are not required to provide wall protection based on location of lot. Projections beyond the exterior wall shall not extend over the lot line. Just keep in mind the attached garages as well as detached garages closer than 3 feet from a dwelling do have fire separation requirements. That's going to be a garage. My opinion is that if the city would like to change the wording of the ordinance, that would be possible, noting pertinent things listed above as needed. The wording will be key. I looked up Rochester's, for example. They have a 6 foot from the house ordinance for their accessory buildings. So, obviously, it's kind of up to you guys, what you think.
At the last meeting, it was like, okay, is this a safety issue? Do we have to worry about code, things like that? Or is it just aesthetics? We don't want buildings crammed up against each other, but maybe that's more of a property owner judgment than the city saying you've got to have this cookie cutter out, type of configuration. But I don't know if we want to revisit it, or if so, do we allow, so long as they're compliant with the fire code and the so-called 3 foot rule, do we allow smaller accessory structures to be tucked in like the proposed one here, and then once a building gets to be a certain size, it needs to be further away? I don't know if those are considerations or not. Because I was just, last month, I was just like, what's the reason for this rule?
To include those things if it was rewritten, is that what you mean? There's specifics that.
Yeah,
Okay.
if we wanted to rewrite it, right? Those would be things.
A couple of years ago, we had one up in my neighborhood where the gal had rebuilt their shed, and it was like 2 feet off the line where it used to be, and the neighbor's shed was like 2 feet off the line. And there was electrical codes, there was a bunch of things wrong with the shed. I don't know what we ever decided on that one. Yeah. And, but then, because it was a neighbor's building, I think that's why we talked about the fire code on that one.
That, I know, you're talking about on Lincoln?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was because it was next to the neighbors.
Right,
It
okay.
was, Harvey Forstner's. It was up again, like right up against
Yeah.
neighbors.
Right. And the line went right down the middle.
Mhm.
Yeah, like
There
a
was
foot,
very
they were
limited
both
space
a
to
foot each
maintain
off,
buildings.
yeah.
There was something awful with the contractor.
Right, yeah, there's a bunch of
There was
things.
some
Yeah.
licensing issues.
Yeah,
with
there was a
the
bunch of
contractor.
things. I'm just saying, if we do look at redoing that ordinance, we want to make sure that we don't set up for getting too close to a neighbor's property or something like that. too.
Yeah, well, that'd be setback.
This might be a dumb question, but let's say they put this one here and then they want to add another one over here and they, you can't keep adding little sheds around. So, okay.
Unless we change that.
No.
If you put one so close to home, do you require that it has the same siding
That's a problem.
as a home, just in general?
Right.
That's a good point.
So it doesn't
Look like crap.
Kind of got that in there already, I think. It's aesthetically similar because we dealt with that on the Schumann garage, right?
Yeah.
And you're right, there's probably subdivision covenants, but those usually expire after 20 or 30 years. So I don't know if we want to, I was thinking, this particular property, it's not that we want to allow them to do this and then ask forgiveness later, but at the same time, what's the reason for this rule? And do we just think about changing it? Or if we leave it as is, then we'll probably have to continue with the variance requests. And I don't know if, we'd probably have to be pretty liberal on this one. I don't think there's a practical difficulty here. And then what? Then we make them move it.
It's gonna miss the black foundation.
Well, I think from a building code perspective, it's not legal to have it that close to a structure or your primary structure. I don't know that for certain. I'd have to dig into the building code, but I don't think that's acceptable.
Why we asked the inspector, but
Didn't he say it was?
He was kind of ambiguous in his wording.
I couldn't quite track exactly
Yeah.
what he was trying to say there myself. But yeah, one question is that, I don't want to feel any pressure to make a decision one way or the other if we're going to keep kicking this around, but it's like where's the project at currently? I mean, the shed's all built and it's just getting a final sign off. So Dale doesn't care if we,
I assume it's probably all done now. I haven't been up there. That was, because this was brought to us by CMS, I'm assuming it's probably fully done now. It's assumption, like I said.
whether he's needing a decision before it gets cold or whatever, I don't know.
Yeah. And I haven't heard from him since our last meeting at all.
Okay.
So if it's less than 5 feet from the principal structure, it can be attached. Is the way he kind of words this. It's a little confusing, right?
I
Like-
don't know. Or is he interpreting our ordinance that says if it's, right now, you gotta have 5 feet of separation. If it's less, then somehow it should be attached. Otherwise, it's not allowed. Is that what he's trying to get
I
at?
think so. Accessory building, unless attached to and made part of it. So it's either greater than 5 feet or greater, or if it's less than that, then it has to be attached.
I think in that
Is the
first
way-
paragraph, he's kind of citing our ordinance.
Yeah,
right
because
now.
it says an accessory building, unless attached to and made part of the principal structure, shall not be closer than 5 feet. So he's kind of flipping it around a little bit from a building code perspective, but
I don't wanna
I don't know.
add more burden on you, but is that something you'd wanna look at? Brian used to be kind of have some knowledge on that
I
basis.
don't do residential stuff very frequently,
Yeah.
but I'm just opening the code, but I'm not going to be able to find it quickly. But yes, you're right. I mean, in a commercial setting, if you have a building that close, depending upon what the occupancy of the building is, there's a requirement on how the walls are constructed
right.
and the openings that you can have. And so this is all combustible construction, so I don't know the answer. I don't think that you can have it that close together. But again, it's also based on the size of the structure
Yeah.
too, like if it is a garage and you're storing combustibles in there,
Yep.
all of that sort of thing, that also applies, but.
Are you willing to check in a little bit more, or do we see if Brian can give his 2 cents, or do we look at what other cities have done if there's a size of structure requirement?
Usually, isn't a building code required if your building is over, a building permit, if you're over 200 square feet, right? And this isn't under, over 200 square feet, it's
120.
120 square feet, so they technically didn't need to get a building permit for it.
Yeah, how did CMS pick up on this?
They saw it, didn't they?
They saw the construction being done. I assume.
So he's not saying from a building code perspective, it's illegal. He's saying,
Just-
bringing it to our attention from a zoning perspective, zoning ordinance perspective.
Because I believe they have another shed in the backyard, but this would be the second one, which is legal and
I think when he came in and asked about it, this, I believe was true. He asked the size of the structure that you needed a building permit. Under 200 square feet, you
Yeah.
need a building permit.
Yeah.
I don't recall at that time whether maybe setbacks perhaps were discussed from the property lines. I don't know if they were setbacks from that.
Did he ask before they started it then? Was he in that?
He came in before he started to ask about if he needed a building permit. That, yes.
Well, here it says Rochester R1 zone accessory building at 6 feet from the house. Right? Is there no?
yeah.
Mhm.
Again, is that a size? Because I think about some of these little plastic storage sheds, 6x6 people put up and lean it against the back of their house. Is that
Yeah.
much different?
Right.
Yeah.
Something we want to kick the can down the road again and see if we can get a little bit more information, or is that, we get tired of doing that?
Information, right?
So what information would you like, Matt?
Well, clarify in the building code, is there really something that limits it? That's one thing for
I
sure.
mean, but that's not under our, that's not our
Right.
jurisdiction, right? I
Right.
mean, we're not the building officials.
If our ordinance is based on that.
If our ordinance says no restrictions, then it's a matter of if you're within 3 feet or something, you gotta have the special firewall, or if it's attached, whatever. And I don't know if there's differentials between, or differences between a utility shed versus a garage, like storing combustibles or whatever.
Yeah.
Whether all of that needs to get checked into a little bit more, I don't want to just have,
Or maybe it's a size thing, if it's over 200 square feet, this applies. Can of worms, I don't know.
what would be the best way to find out some of these questions, other than dump it on Kim.
Kim won't do it.
Thank you.
Well, I would just, we're on Kim. I'm like.
You're Kim.
Neither of us are gonna do it.
No, we can dump it on you too.
I was just looking at that. Tool sheds and storage sheds are not required to provide wall protection based on location of the lot. And then he says, keep in mind that attached garages as well as detached garages closer to 3 feet do have fire separation. So is it because of what it is, the difference between a shed and?
And I know what Kim Jensen's saying is it's, it is,
Yeah, 5 or
Okay,
closer
okay.
than 3 is I
Okay.
think the building code.
if it's strictly zoning, that's one thing, but
Yeah.
building code's building code, and our ordinance has a regulation on it or not, they still comply with the building code.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
what's the
It's-
purpose of 5 feet or Rochester 6 feet? Is it strictly, we want to make this looks better having a little bit of space? Is that why? The reason for that rule?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, because it's not a construction question. It's not a fire question, because that's not what the zoning code does. The zoning code is more on
Aesthetics.
on the use of the space and not on the construction of it and the safety of it.
Because we want to have enough space for people to get in there for maintenance and mowing and snow shoveling and painting and.
And fire access.
Yeah. But if the property owner says, I don't care about that.
Apparently, the insurance agent doesn't either.
Do we want to think about what Tom's suggesting? If it's under 200 or whatever is an appropriate size, then no restrictions, and if it's greater, then stick with the 5-foot rule? Maybe we're just over accommodating Dale, I don't know.
That's my word. But like I said, I know 2 neighbors that have like a little 6x6 sheds up next to their house too.
Yeah, I know somebody who used to be on this planning commission had a shed on, well, it was on skids, but still right next to the house, and he knew that was in violation, but he didn't care.
That looks fine.
Well, I don't know what other information we would be able to get to make a decision, because it is more on zoning versus building codes. The building code guy is saying it's okay because it's under X number of square feet, then we're not going to get any more information from him. I think it's a decision up to us to say it's okay because it's under X number of square feet, even though that's not what it states in the ordinance, or we say, no, it's not okay, and you got to move your shed.
Or we modify the ordinance.
Or we modify the ordinance to remove that stipulation, but then everyone can put their shed right next to their building.
Or
right.
modify the ordinance to say over 200 square feet.
Sure, if that's the direction we want to do.
Does this shed add square footage to the house when they sell it, or is it just, it is considered just a shed then, because it's detached, right? Right?
Yeah, it is. It's not.
Yeah.
Small square.
Yeah.
So one of the possibilities is if you're under 120 square feet, 120 square feet or under, there would be no restrictions on location. If you're over 120, is that what we're saying?
Only 120.
Oh, I thought 200? Let's go with that. If you're under 200 square feet, no restrictions on location in the yard? Is that one of the possibilities?
It's like a,
It's 4, 10 by
well,
20.
it's 10 by 20.
10 by 20.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, a single garage.
It's a good size.
Would be, that would work for a garage.
How big is this shed? You know?
Square feet?
It says it's 15 by 8.
120 used to be?
100,
And
isn't it?
how long has it been out to 200? Has it been a long time?
Probably 6 or 7 years, I want to say.
About that.
A lot of codes and communities are 120 and below. That's why I said 120.
Okay.
Oh,
I looked up today.
Yeah, we're gonna stick with 200 if we feel like that's getting a little bit bigger, and just stay with 120 if we want to. I think Tom was right, just if we wanted to propose an amendment, and just say for all, yeah, we'd have to look at that, but whatever the 5-foot rule is, you could just say for accessory structures greater than 120 square feet, must have at least 5 feet from the principal.
Just going to throw out, if you were going to build something, 8 by 16 works out with standard lumber and that's 128 square feet. Huh? I'm just saying.
Well, we'd have to call a public hearing and to amend the zoning ordinance, and then council would have to approve it. So I guess if we're interested in that, we could schedule a public hearing now if we want to, or we want to think about it one more month and then schedule it for the next meeting if we're interested in doing that. And the other question is, do we, we can take it upon ourselves to do this, or since this was sort of initiated because of Dale's property, and he's already paid the fee for a variance, which we think may not be issued,
Right.
do we apply that fee towards converting it to an amendment to the zoning ordinance to help pay the publication, since this is really for Dale's benefit? Maybe.
I think everybody's unsure what to do, but I think if we had a public hearing next month, we might get a little more input to help make a final decision. If we just push it off, we're just pushing it off.
I suppose we want to, Kurt will need some guidance on what the public hearing would say. And we can always change it, but do we say to allow structures greater than 128 square feet have to be within 5 feet of the principal?
Yeah, you ain't gonna walk there.
You can't even get through.
So greater than 120, you still have to follow the 5-foot rule that we have in our ordinance.
28, whatever.
What was 128? Okay.
I'm just throwing that out there.
I think that,
Nobody's
I
made a
agree.
motion yet.
I agree with that. Yeah. You gotta put in a motion.
Here, make that a motion. Anybody have strong feelings one way or the other? So you made that motion.
I make a motion that we consider changing the ordinance to allow for building structures less than 128 square feet to be within 5 foot. Or the other way around, whichever way you say it.
Closer than 5 feet.
Yeah, it can be, it's 128 square feet or less, you can basically be almost anywhere in your yard. Based on follow your setbacks.
Setbacks in the property lines, of course.
Well, I think you were right on the first time where we just say anything greater than 128 has to be within more than 5 feet from the principal.
And the ordinance to say that, yeah. Amendment.
Or under, don't even say anything.
Right.
Right.
Because we still have the normal setbacks and everything else that would govern.
So greater than 128 square feet, you would still follow the 5-foot
Right.
rule.
We're just adding that square footage to the ordinance.
Okay.
I think is what we'd be doing.
Is that 5-foot rule? I'm trying to remember. Is that across the board in all zoning districts or just
Good question.
residential?
Good question.
Isn't it different in fringe?
I believe it, yeah, if you're agricultural, it gets a little different.
Closer, but she had more than
She are
definition of accept.
2
She's commercial fringe.
commercial fringe.
So that'll have to go to public hearing next month.
Yeah, but do we imagine we don't, this has to be strictly in residential, isn't it? I guess we need to know what districts we're talking about here in the public hearing. I
This is
can't,
residential.
Well, in his note.
Yeah, does the accessory buildings, does this section of the code
It's
apply to residential?
R1, R2, R3, is that all it would qualify?
R1A
R1A?
to R3. I can look up the residential.
I don't know, you don't have your code with you, do you?
I got the opposite, right?
Still bugs you.
It does. I hate it. From an aesthetic perspective, I hate the way that looks. And I don't
I
think
know,
it's a
that's
smart
why
thing.
that's why I was like, oh, I don't know,
I
are they
don't
gonna
think it's a
be?
smart thing from a building code perspective, but it's not my house.
Should the city inject its own views on what looks good and what
Yeah.
doesn't? I don't know.
Right.
But there isn't any
But it's
covenant
also
at the golf course, is there?
house
I mean, not that we don't weigh in on covenants, but is there a covenant in the golf course for that?
There is.
That's in a,
There is a covenant on
Yep.
there? What does it say?
It's it says it needs to go through the covenant to get approval,
Oh, yeah.
but I don't know how far they,
Either Schumacher or Bigelow is the Architectural Control
Oh,
Committee,
yeah, yeah.
and I'm sure
but they don't really.
Too big of a-
Very much. So would you put PUD on there too then? Or they could say have their own covenants?
PUD is like just an overlay, isn't it?
So,
Well, we had didn't our building inspector before want us to update the PUD ordinance? Yeah, let's not worry about that.
It's kind of in the back, and not
Yeah,
readily
I
visible it
didn't
is.
see it.
Oh, yeah, oh, that's their problem.
We're seeing a lot of these little sheds popping up.
I don't know.
I just,
I don't know.
boring, but it's interesting that it's got concrete.
That is weird.
I mean, most people's sheds are on skids or on concrete on a pad, a separate.
Well, I was wondering if that was set up for a patio in the first place, if there was concrete poured there for a little patio, and it's just like a shed instead.
Maybe so, but there's
Oh,
block
maybe.
at the bottom of the wall, which is kind of smart.
Well, it was a motion.
It doesn't, this is in section 3 under general district provisions, accessory buildings, doesn't differentiate between residential or commercial or industrial, just says in cases where, let's see, accessory building is attached to the principal structure, which kind of suggests a house. It shall be made structurally part of the structure, blah, blah, blah. And then it says an accessory building, unless attached and made a part of the principal structure, shall not be closer than 5 feet to the principal structure. Doesn't say anything about R1 or anything. So I don't know about in the commercial or industrial world if that matters. What's his comment on that?
He said, commercial projects can get a bit more complicated. But he did say, to clarify, this would be concerning residential buildings that fit the scope
Right.
of the Minnesota residential code.
So should we just say, just limit this to R1, R1A, R2, R3, and R4?
Including that in my motion.
You make great motions.
Is there a
It's a committee
second?
thing, it's symbiosis.
Any further discussion? This is to set a public hearing for 5:35 at the next meeting, right?
We need a separate one.
Okay,
well, it'll be a little later because we have another possible public hearing that day too.
Kevin thought separate motion for that anyway.
Oh, okay.
All in favor of the proposed amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstain, carries. Then what's the other potential public hearing?
Variance application for a sign, so if you look at,
Oh, the school district.
yeah, school district. So just so I have it written right, sorry. So anything greater than 128 square feet will still follow the 5-foot rule when it comes to accessory buildings, correct? That'd be the amendment
In all the
in
residential
those
zoning
4
districts.
residential areas? Okay. Good.
Oh, wait a minute. Thank you.
Or to say the 5-foot setback is applicable on structures over 128 square feet.
And forget about limiting it to, because residential would be if you did it the opposite, right? That we're allowing it. How would
Or if we
you-
take that wording you read and just say that it was applicable if the structure's over 128.
So there's a If you're in commercial or industrial and you got a smaller building, no big deal.
Well, whatever the ordinance says now, it doesn't address that anyway.
Sure. Yep. Forget about it then, about the limiting it to residential.
Oh, okay.
I was just concerned about what Kim read here. Commercial properties can get more complicated. But that's more from a code perspective, isn't it? Don't you think?
I'd say yes.
Let's just keep it simple
Yeah,
and
this
forget
sentence,
about it.
just add that to that sentence you read.
Okay.
You can say an accessory building greater than 128 square feet unless attached to and made part of the principal structure shall not be closer than 5 feet.
No,
All
no.
right. Is there a motion to set a public hearing for,
Would be for November 14th.
should we do 5:35 on this one?
I'll make the motion to have a public hearing on November 14th.
I won't be here.
I'll second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, carries. Okay, now we're on to
Schools.
6A. Go ahead.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
Variance application for high school. Lacrosse Sign Group is asking for an increase to the variance to allowed square footage for a 60 square foot sign to be attached as Zumbrota Mazeppa High School. The current requirements are 32 square feet. As you can see, letter B under sub 5 there for permitted signs. So they need a variance because it's a little bit larger than that. You can see where it's going to go on the high school. Lacrosse Signs has done many signs in Zumbrota. If you need the verbiage on a variance, whatever is required, it's under old business. And if granted, the variance would be moved to public hearing, which would be held on November 14th at 5:40.
You know, when you initially emailed that to me, we were thinking, gosh, why are we making the school this tax exempt organization do this? It's like, well, we don't want to completely exempt an entity like this because we don't want anything to go. So I guess it still makes sense that we have to make them go through this hoop.
Understanding, I guess, I'm not sure why it would even be a concern, but.
I know. But
Yeah.
Well, signage on a building is a concern, can be a concern, right?
Neon
I
flashing.
mean, well, that and just the volume of it.
Intrusiveness.
I do believe the sign will be, you can kind of tell in the picture, it will be kind of backlit. Zumbrota High School,
Parking lot.
it's off of
Yeah.
a major road anyway. And it's the new entrance, which used to be the rear entrance. So, yeah, you guys are familiar with what that is.
We had the one years ago, was an air conditioner guy that wanted to put a sign out here on the, the curb where you go to the sale barn or 58 comes around. And we had to address that, if it would be a nuisance to any other properties.
So the public hearing happens next month.
Correct. Yeah.
That's the steps. They apply for the variance, goes to public hearing, and then we act on it.
And then we take it to the next council meeting.
Yep.
so motion to schedule a public hearing for 5:40, is that right, Kurt?
Yes.
All right, anybody care?
Second.
Discussion, all in favor, say aye.
All right.
Carries. So I suppose that has to get sent out to the people within 350 feet. Okay.
Several people around the high school. That's all right though.
No further business, meeting adjourned.